This is Winter Ready, a severe weather special from the WENY News First Warning Weather Team. Brought to you by Simmons Rockwell Automotive Dealerships.
Well, thanks for tuning in to our winter weather special, Winter Ready, sponsored by Simmons Rockwell Automotive Group. I'm Chief Meteorologist Joe Veras, joined by meteorologist Darlene Detell and Connor Thompson.
In the next half hour, we'll cover a variety of winter weather topics, including cloud seeding and winter weather outlook for the upcoming season, how COVID-19 spreads differently in the colder months, and if in fact our winters have been getting warmer.
But we start with a look back at what was a historic snowstorm last December.
December 2020 was a snowy month for the Twin Tiers, and for parts of our viewing area, the nor'easter of December 16th and 17th will go down as one of the top all-time snowstorms to have ever hit the region. Some areas ended up with nearly a whole season's worth of snow. Let's take a look back at this historic storm. In the days leading up to the storm, we were paying close attention to the East Coast, where low pressure was expected to develop near the Carolinas. Snow was in our forecast for that Wednesday and Thursday as early as late the previous week, but as we got closer, it was apparent that the trends favored increased snowfall totals, especially across our central and eastern portions of our viewing area.
Winter storm watches were issued on Monday the 14th, 48 hours prior to the storm's arrival. Snow began Wednesday afternoon as low pressure lifted north along the coast. At the same time, high pressure over southern Canada helped slow the storm and supplied cold air from the north. By Wednesday evening, snow was falling at a good clip, and we began to track a band of heavy snow over sections of central Pennsylvania.
Heaviest snow right now just to the east of Elmira, where you see the pink here from Owego down through the valley, Towanda, over towards Troy. Snowfall rates in excess of 2 inches an hour.
By midnight, we were measuring about a foot of snow at our studios in Horseheads, while parts of Bradford County in Pennsylvania and Tioga County, New York, were already up to nearly 20 inches. Snowfall rates overnight were as high as 5 inches an hour for consecutive hours, making travel nearly impossible. The extremely heavy snowfall even made it hard for plow truck drivers to clear the roads.
We saw here at our office, I believe, on the order of 4 to 5 inch per hour snowfall rates. And that was that was approximately like 1 to 2 a.m. to about 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. There was like a 3 to 4 hour window where we saw 4 to 5 inch snowfall rates.
The snow had tapered off by sunrise Thursday morning, but not before over 40 inches fell to the east of Elmira. Downtown Elmira recorded 18.7 inches of snow, an all-time record for daily snowfall in December. Records date back to 1893. While the storm lifting up the coast contained plenty of Atlantic moisture, it was what we call Frontogenesis that was responsible for the remarkable snowfall rates, which resulted in the historic totals.
Usually you get an area of frontogenesis, is what we called it. And the frontogenesis is basically defined by a strong area of, a temperature gradient where you have very cold air on one side and very warm, moist air on the other, and where you get those air masses kind of coming together, and you have strong forcing where you have basically strong winds pushing those air masses together, and the only place for it to go is up. So, and when the moist air mass is lifted, that's when you get condensation, where you get the precipitation fall out of it. And when you have such strong winds that come together within that air mass, that's when you get the heavy amounts of precip, or the heavy precip rates, in this case heavy snowfall rates.
Taking a look at the final snowfall totals across the region, it was really amazing to see such a tight gradient in snowfall amounts within just a short distance. For instance, Ithaca received 11 inches of snow, while just 25 miles away, Newark Valley picked up a staggering 44 inches, 4 times that amount.
And what's also amazing is that even though parts of the region picked up nearly a whole season's worth of snow in just one storm,
it didn't last long thanks to above average temperatures leading to flooding Christmas Day.
And as we approach winter, we're coming off an unseasonably mild fall. Our growing season was extended well into October and even into November for parts of the Twin Tiers. In fact, we didn't experience our first freeze in Elmira until the first week of November.
There have only been 2 other years where the first freeze was so late in the season. With all this in mind, the topic of climate change continues to surface. So we pose the question, are our winters getting warmer?
It's important to note that weather conditions for a particular day or even a month doesn't justify a change in climate per se. Climate, instead, is weather averaged over an extended period of time. With that in mind, I wanted to take a look at our climate, not nationally, but locally here in the Twin Tiers, particularly the winter months, to see if in fact our winters have been getting warmer. In order to answer that question, we look back through decades and decades of weather data. We're fortunate here in the Twin Tiers to have weather observations that go back over 100 years. Our data goes all the way back to 1883, a time when Mark Twain spent his summers in Elmira and before automobiles were on the roads.
So yeah, there's more than 8,000 cooperative network stations across the United States. Some of them have been around, like you said, for a very long time, since the 1800s. Those are some of the older ones in our area, Elmira and Ithaca.
Of course, as we look at all of the data, we see temperature trends both up and down, but to help summarize the data, we'll be comparing climate normals, which are basically averages in 30-year periods. These normals are updated every 10 years.
So both of those stations, Ithaca and Elmira, are part of that smaller historical network, which means basically that they're really good data sets, and they are used as a whole to gauge kind of the climate of the United States and to look at things like regional climate change.
The data used in this study originates in Elmira and at Cornell University near Ithaca. We talked to David McCarty, Chief Water Treatment Plant Operator at the Elmira Water Board, where the daily observations are taken for the Elmira climate site.
Well, they go out and they take the temperature, the highs and lows for the last 24 hours, the temperature when they do it, and rainfall for the last 24 hours.
While the original observations were taken by a pharmacist in Elmira back in 1883, the National Weather Service considers the current observations taken by the Water Board as the same collection of data, as its location is still within 5 miles of the original observations. To answer our original question of whether or not our winters have been getting warmer, we simply crunched the numbers. No bias involved, we just compare the rolling 30-year average at the beginning of each decade to find our answer. In both Elmira and Ithaca, the last two climate normals have basically been unchanged, meaning our 30-year average between 1981 and 2010 and the average of 1991 to 2020 is practically the same. However, there has been a noticeable rise of about 2 degrees when compared to the average of 1961 to 1990. What's perhaps most surprising is the fact that the 30-year averages from 1921 to 1950 and 1931 to 1960 are actually warmer compared to today. Our findings suggest that while current winters tend to be warmer compared to just a few decades ago, they're actually cooler when compared to those from earlier in the previous century, especially in the years prior to 1950.
And have you ever wondered if you can create precipitation? It's actually being done in some parts of the country. It's called cloud seeding. Coming up, we'll talk about a company that helps use the science to create snow for ski resorts out west.
And later, as we prepare for winter, we'll talk to a local car shop about how you can make sure your car is winter ready for the snow and icy roads.
You're watching Winter Ready. We will return in just a moment. Welcome back to Winter Ready, brought to you by Simmons Rockwell Automotive Dealerships.
Well, every day we spend our time predicting the weather based on weather patterns and observations.
And one of the biggest forecasting challenges is forecasting how much snow we'll get, or even if we'll get snow at all. What if I told you there was a way to make snow, and it's been used for decades? Cloud seeding. It's a type of weather modification where people use silver iodide or dry ice to artificially make rain or snow. Rain and snow comes from a cloud that already has ice in the cloud. Liquid water in clouds need either temperatures as cold as negative 48 degrees Fahrenheit or some type of dust particle to freeze onto. This will create crystals, which attracts more water, and then they eventually get heavy enough where they fall. As they fall, we either see them as rain if they melt or snow if they stay frozen.
Case most efficient one is silver iodide. It's a substance like that very commonly produced, and it's not really very toxic, or toxic at all. And you basically disperse it, and you start this process, and then it's like takes care of itself. It's like avalanche. It's like it then goes, as long as you started it, it goes by itself. Another substance that is used is dry ice. It's been discovered that dry ice, because it's very cold, it produces lots of ice crystal by itself when it evaporates. So you basically shovel it from airplane or on a cloud.
Dr. Karat Danoff states it is a popular practice around the world and takes technique and skill. Now, I got the chance to speak with the president of the North American Weather Consultants, Garrett Kamens, and learned how his company applies this technique to make both rain and snow across the U.S.
For mountainous programs, so looking like the Rocky Mountain Range, we use generators. These generators burn a solution of silver iodide, and we burn the solution at the base of major mountains where the cloud seeding effects are desirable. And we use the storm's winds, so they're natural winds, to elevate and lift the cloud seeding materials into the upper layers of the cloud deck.
The NAWC works closely with the government and private entities to provide irrigation water and drinking water to residential and agricultural areas. The Northeast coast tends to have a surplus of water, but we don't always get our fair share of snow every ski season. I asked Garrett if the Northeast could make use of cloud seeding at its ski resorts.
From a commercial perspective, there would be potential at ski slopes. There are a number of resorts in Colorado in particular that rely on cloud seeding to help bolster their snowpack and extend their ski season. And so from a commercial perspective, I could see a number of ski resorts on the East Coast benefiting from cloud seeding.
Garrett goes on to say a ski resort could reap large economical rewards for very minimal cost. He sees the future of cloud seeding only growing with time. As the world population continues to grow, so does that demand for water. And cloud seeding is a snowmaking process that we may be seeing at our local ski slopes sooner rather than later.
And while winter is known for getting snow and, just as you saw, getting a lot of it at once, there are other types of precipitation that can fall during the winter months. The first precipitation type is rain. As you can see, all precipitation starts off as snow, as the higher altitudes are always below freezing. As that snow falls, it melts as it sees a large area of warm air that extends to the surface. This means it doesn't freeze and it stays as rain. The second type we see during the winter is what we call freezing rain. This occurs when there's a large swath of warm air, allowing it to melt, but as it reaches the surface, the air goes below freezing, causing the water to freeze as it hits the ground. The third type is sleet. Sleet forms when it comes into contact with a shallow area of warm air, and that causes the snow to melt, but below that, there's a large area of cold air that causes it to refreeze. And lastly, there's snow. Snow is formed by cold air in the upper atmosphere, and cold air remains all the way down as it continues to fall as snow.
Well, just like you make sure you have a shovel, gloves, and hat, scarf, you're prepared for winter weather, it's important to make sure your car is ready too.
Still ahead, some tips when you hit the road or even find yourself stuck.
Welcome back to Winter Ready, brought to you by Simmons Rockwell Automotive Dealerships.
Well, welcome back to our Winter Ready special. Driving's an important part of life for many here in the Twin Tiers.
But what steps can someone take to make sure their car is ready for the snow and cold? I talked to a service advisor at Simmons Rockwell to find out. With winter quickly approaching, it is time to make sure your car is ready to hit the roads in the snowy conditions and help you remain safe. But where do you start? According to Sean Suchko with Simmons Rockwell Subaru, tire depth size is something to take into account.
One of our strong suggestions is tire depth. Normal tire sizes when they're new should be between 9/30 seconds and 12/30 seconds. Commonly, you'll see a tire pass state inspection around 3/30 seconds, but you'd want to get that addressed right away.
He says changing your tires before the winter hits is a good idea due to the range of snow that the Twin Tiers gets.
Here in upstate New York, conditions can go from inches on the hour to sideways sleet. That being said, we want to make sure you're getting the most optimal traction.
Susco notes while you don't need to change to winter tires, it is recommended to switch to these tires because they offer the right amount of traction in the snow.
We strongly suggest the snow treads. It is not a requiem. You do have the opportunity to do an all season, which is great for each aspect of the year. But we suggest it in the case that things do start to fly, inches on the hour. We want to make sure you're getting optimal traction and keeping your family safe.
Also, make sure your wiper blades can handle the snow as well. One of the most common things Susco notices is the blades on the rear windshield not being in good condition.
One thing we do catch on is the torn and ripped wiper blades. Commonly, you don't inspect your rear one. Next thing you know, you're going to back out somewhere and the windshield isn't as clear as you need it.
As the winter months arrive, the potentially hazardous weather means you're more likely to get into an accident or get stuck in the snow. If that happens, make sure you have an emergency kit to keep in your car that can keep you safe while you wait for help.
Have a safety kit in the vehicle, blankets, road flares, or maybe an LED notification. If you are off on the side of the road, other drivers should slow to 35 and move to the adjacent lane, keeping you guys safe and, of course, notified that you're on the side of the road.
Oh, good stuff there. Well, coming up, we'll go over how to protect yourself from COVID-19 during the winter months.
And do viruses spread more easily indoors? We'll talk about that with an expert to find out.
You're watching Winter Ready. We will return in just a moment.
And welcome back. Our focus now turns to COVID-19.
We look into how the colder months may change the spread of the virus.
As the seasons begin to change, many people begin to worry about the spread of COVID-19 and other viruses in the wintertime. I spoke with Dr. Nistico to see exactly what about the winter causes COVID-19 cases to rise.
In general, you might find that if the space is enclosed, because the way that COVID-19 is really spread is by something called respiratory droplet, where there are these tiny little droplets that are released by someone sneezing, coughing, or even breathing who has COVID-19, and they're small enough where they lift up into the air.
To prevent these droplets from spreading into enclosed areas, many people open windows and make sure there is good ventilation. Dr. Nistico shares why air circulation is so important, especially in the dry winter months.
If there's drier air inside of a home that's enclosed without real good ventilation, you probably would have more spread. But in general, it depends upon, just viruses spreading, in an enclosed space.
And when the air is dry, these tiny respiratory droplets remain in the air for a longer amount of time. Moist air causes these droplets to sink to the ground at a faster rate, lowering the risk of COVID-19 spreading.
What's really good is if, for example, you're going to have a get together or, a gathering, either of family, friends, close loved ones. So the way that you could do even in the home is that you could have, windows open if it's a nice day, make sure that there's nice ventilation. Like you could even in some cases open a window, have fans on in the home. And really, it's if you're really wanting to be cautious, because, minimizing spread really comes down to having a good, open, ventilated environment.
Alongside good ventilation and airflow, humidifiers are also a helpful way to keep the air inside your house on the moist side, while decreasing the risk of spreading COVID-19.
Well, still ahead, the WENY First Warning Weather Team will break down our own winter weather outlook for the winter season. We'll be right back.
You're watching Winter Ready. We will return in just a moment.
Well, welcome back. The time has come for our winter weather predictions. Before we get to that, though, let's briefly take a look back at last winter here in the Twin Tiers. We were in a La Nina weather pattern. We ended up with about 10, 11 inches of additional snowfall compared to a normal winter, picked up just over 52 inches in the Elmira area, and temperature-wise running just a little bit above a half a degree above average. This winter, we're also expecting to be in a weak La Nina weather pattern, and typically that means near average or slightly above average temperatures for us wetter than average conditions over the Ohio Valley and southern Great Lakes area. So that brings us to our predictions for this upcoming 2021-2022 winter season. And myself, in terms of temperature, going with above average readings, once again similar to what we had last winter.
And I am also going up with above average temperatures this winter as well.
And of course, I have to finish up. Third person's the charm. We're looking at above average temperatures due to that La Nina pattern.
All right, so we're all in agreement there with above average temperatures for the upcoming winter. But does that mean that we get less snow? Well, remember, last winter we had above average temperatures, but also above average snowfall. So again, I'm thinking it's going to be very similar to what we had last winter. Not a whole lot of snow on the ground in terms of snow depth, but a couple double-digit snowfall totals that are going to help us push us above average.
And I am heading the same way with La Nina once again. I'm going above average.
And I too am going above average. I'm thinking we're going to touch near 60 inches for snowfall this entire season.
Well, there you have it. We'll have to wait and see whether or not those predictions come true. Time will tell. Well, thank you for joining us for this year's edition of Winter Ready.
Be sure to stick with us at WNY First Warning Weather Team to stay informed and stay safe this winter season.
From all of us at WNY News, good night.
Thanks for watching Winter Ready, brought to you by Simmons Rockwell Automotive Dealerships. This has been a WENY News special presentation.